Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a highly practical, literally tactical guide from our source material on diagnosing and treating the common roadblocks that totally derail a consistent prayer life. If you've ever felt like your habits have just hit a brick wall, or maybe you just can't seem to focus, well, this guide is going to break down exactly what those root causes are, and more importantly, we'll look at the highly specific, game-changing solutions to get you right back on track.
Okay, let's just dive right into this by tackling the exact question so many believers ask when a crisis hits. Where did I go wrong? People ask this in total despair, right? But what they don't realize is that the issue actually frequently stems from a fundamental lack of prayer. So many unnecessary struggles pop up simply because we don't know how, when, or even why to pray when things get super tough. But don't worry, we're going to look at exactly how to fix that.
To do that, we'll navigate through four main stages. First up, the foundation. Second, we'll look at physical hurdles. Third, we tackle the spiritual hurdles. And finally, we'll wrap up with praying through the storm.
So kicking things off with Section 1, the foundation, purpose and power.
Look, if you don't realize the sheer power of prayer, it is way too easy to just push it aside. Take the biblical account of Elijah, for example. His earnest, fervent prayer literally caused a 3.5-year drought and then ended it. I mean, think about that. If prayer can actually move God to do something so incredibly powerful, why do we so often lack the boldness to ask for great and mighty things?
And that brings us to this fascinating dynamic. Basically, you cannot expect supernatural output if you aren't willing to provide the carnal input, right? Your input is the actual physical act of boldly asking God for what you need. Think about the Christians working at NASA 50 years ago. Were they bold enough to ask God to help them land on the moon? You have to make specific, audacious requests.
Another huge foundational piece is timing. The source material points out that God's schedule is exact. We're talking down to the absolute millisecond. And prayer is the thing that tunes you into this synchronized timeline. Just look at the unbelievable examples of people who escaped the 9/11 disaster back in 2001 or the 2004 tsunami by mere minutes, just because their departure was somehow delayed. Prayer actually aligns your daily movements with that perfect schedule.
So, how do we make prayer actionable? Try keeping a diary, digital or physical, whatever works for you, to jot down revelations right after you pray. You really have to listen closely to that still small voice. Let's say you pray for a sibling who just lost their job, and you suddenly feel prompted to give them $100. Boom, write that down on your action list. Doing this transforms your prayer from just a passive thought into an active, two-way dialogue.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, the physical hurdles, beating exhaustion.
So what actually happens when you are literally just too tired, sick, or distracted to focus? I absolutely love these practical micro-actions from the text. If you're falling asleep or losing focus, stop feeling guilty about it. Treat it like a tactical mission. Take a quick half-hour nap first. Grab a snack to fuel your brain. You can even pray with your eyes completely open in the dark. Having trouble concentrating? Try putting on an instrumental pan flute track or drink a vitamin energy tonic to boost your focus. It's just incredibly practical stuff.
And hey, if you're dealing with a throat illness, or maybe you're in a hospital bed with an oxygen mask, rest assured you do not have to pray out loud. Remember Hannah in 1 Samuel? God heard her prayer perfectly when she spoke in her heart and only her lips moved. The physical inability to speak does absolutely nothing to sever your connection. Honestly, your physical posture should never needlessly cut your prayer time short. If you've got a backache, grab a rolled-up towel. If you're in a wheelchair, simply adjust it to a semi-reclining position to take the pressure off. If kneeling is killing your joints, throw a cushion down, wear some soft-shell sandals, or strap on a knee-saver brace.
The source material even suggests a simple timing trick. Shift your posture slightly every 10 to 15 minutes. By making these minor little tweaks, you ensure that physical discomfort doesn't cause you to cut your fellowship time short. It's really all about optimizing your physical environment so it supports your spiritual goals instead of fighting against them. Okay, let's shift gears into Section 3, the spiritual hurdles, confronting sin and laziness.
Now, these spiritual hurdles are those super tricky moments when guilt makes us want to just hide, much like Adam and Eve did. But there is a vital distinction made here. God can certainly bless the sinner, but he can never bless the sin itself. So if you've messed up, hiding is not the answer. The real solution is to name the specific sins, confess their severity, and get them completely out of the way before you ask for anything else.
But what if you're not hiding? You just feel spiritually lazy. Well, the author says to treat it like a strict medical prescription for your own well-being. To kickstart the habit, write down a list of the exact blessings you want. Maybe it's a job promotion or a bigger house. Set daily smartphone alarms so you don't forget. You can even voice record your own prayers to play back on your phone when your motivation is completely tanked. Hearing your own recorded prayer can totally prompt you to jump right back in.
And if you ever find yourself actively planning to commit a sin, which happens to the best of us, try this really fascinating exercise. Literally write out a list of the reasons why you want to do it, and then, right below that, write out the dangerous consequences. Seeing those pros and cons visually exposed right there on paper reveals just how dangerous the act really is. It acts as a mental roadblock to the sin itself.
Finally, we reach Section 4, Praying Through the Storm, Crisis Mode.
When the massive problems of the world and the actions of evildoers just feel way too heavy to bear, we need to completely redefine prayer. It's not some last resort of despair, guys. It is a powerful weapon of offense. Imagine a tiny group of people with advanced weaponry taking on an entire army. By speaking in faith directly to your obstacles, whether that's sickness or crushing debt, you are effectively activating a self-destruct or self-repair mechanism that is hidden within that very problem.
Now, for those massive mountains in your life that just won't seem to budge, there is a very specific regimen recommended here. Set aside exactly 1 day every 2 months, strictly dedicated to fasting and praying for your most difficult, long-standing problems. Because sometimes standard methods just aren't enough, and this intense, dedicated discipline is what's required to finally break through that hardship.
And what about crises that are directly caused by other people? When you're oppressed by the wicked, whether it's a criminal or an unfair politician, it's time to flip the script. Instead of just praying for their punishment, try praying for their souls. Thank God for the grace He shows them, and ask for the strength to disarm them with radical kindness and love. That is what actually pricks a conscience.
Which brings us to our ultimate comfort. Prayer is essentially your spiritual cave. Referencing Psalm 91, it acts as a secret place to just go and hide when everything becomes way too much for you to handle. You retreat into this cave during times of fear and danger, and you get to emerge completely refreshed and ready to face the world again.
We have covered a lot of tactical ground in this explainer today, haven't we? From physical posture and pan flute music to breaking down spiritual laziness and fighting through literal crises. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative question to challenge your daily routine. Will you draw near to the throne of grace today?